Okay, I think I'll get started. I am Megan Kumatek, Director of Leadership and Awards at ACTE. Thanks to everyone who's joining our webinar right now, and thanks to our panelists and our expert panelists and our moderator. So before we get started, I'm just going to do a few housekeeping items and then hand it over to our panel. With that, we have a lot of things in the works with upcoming webinars specifically related to the inclusion, access, equity, and diversity work. So they will be added in the next couple of weeks. So please check back on our webinars page frequently for that information. And we also will be posting today's recording to this website as well. So you can view all of the past webinars on this page, including Dr. Renuki's part 1 and part 2 webinars that she has conducted as well. So with that, I also wanted to give a plug for membership at ACTE. These webinars are nicely orchestrated and open to all CTE educators. So if you're not a member of ACTE, we would love you to be one. You can find more information about this at this link or send me a message and I'd be happy to put you in contact with our Director of Membership. With that, I am going to hand it over to Jill. Dr. Renuki is a college and career readiness advocate and has an extensive background in career and technical education as an administrator and teacher. She's held district positions in CTE in Arizona and Texas, as well as serving as an assistant principal in Arizona. Additionally, she has taught for 7 years at the University of Northern Iowa and 3 years at the University of Akron. Recently, she has been consulting for several CTE companies to help them align resources to state standards, state initiatives, industry recognized credentials, certifications, and academic integration. Jill believes every CTE course must provide premier curricular resources to promote successful student outcomes. She also earned a PhD in teaching and teacher education curriculum and instruction and education leadership from the University of Arizona, an MS in sport psychology, and a BS in education with K-12 certifications in several core and CTE content areas. So without further ado, Jill, thank you so much for putting these on and putting these together. She's done a fabulous job on all our webinars. So thank you, Jill, and I will hand it over to you.
Megan, thank you so much. And thank you for everybody that is participating today. This is part 3 of a 3-part series. So if you weren't able to be in the first or second of this series, you can find it on the page that Megan just showed that we spoke with industry about academic integration in part 1 of the series. Part 2 of the series, we spoke with educators. And today we're going to speak with students as well as former students. In a minute, I'm going to introduce them. I want to give you a little bit of background just in case you didn't see the industry as well as the educators that spoke very highly of the need for academic integration. This is part of the new and related services division at ACTE. We've already formed a committee of educators as well as administrators and professionals that are helping formulate what we need in each state. Just to give you a background of where we are at the moment, we have sent a survey to all 50 state CTE leaders on what is already happening within every state in the country in the integration of academics in their CTE courses. We will be having the results of that survey available within the next few weeks, and we're going to be moving forward with how we can implement nationally some standards for integrating academics into CTE. Today, we have 4 dynamite students and former students that are going to be able to discuss with us the absolute importance of why they feel academic integration was so critical during their education, during their current education, or during their careers now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully I'm going to be able to pull up this slideshow. And this is a discussion with students. And our 4 students, and this is in alphabetical order, so no specific order, alphabetical. We have Isabel Mayo, she is a current student. And what's interesting about 2 of the 4 students we have today, she's a current CTE student in JROTC. That's not even available as a CTE subject or cluster in all 50 states. We also have Kevin Ramirez. He was a former CTE student in computer science, and he'll be speaking to us today. Krishana Stewart, she is a current post-secondary student in culinary arts / business, and she's going to talk a little bit about why she's actually in 2 CTE areas and what her future goals are. And then we have Steve Wesselman, who was a former CTE student. And again, this is another field that is not considered a CTE cluster in all 50 states. He was fortunate enough to be in a state where technical theater was considered CTE, and he's going to tell us how his background in that CTE pathway led him into the career he's in today. So I'm going to stop sharing. And what I'm going to do, we're going to start with Isabel, and I'm going to mute myself. She's going to unmute and she's going to introduce herself and tell us just a little bit about herself.
Hello, my name is Isabel Mayo. I'm the battalion commander for Murphy High School at Mobile, Alabama. And I'm also the brigade commander for all the Mobile County Public Schools, JRTC. And my job in the program is to oversee all the schools in Mobile County that have JRTC programs and run drill meets and things like that.
Next, we have Kevin. We're going alphabetical. Kevin, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
I will gladly talk a little bit about my background. So I'm Kevin. I'm a former CTE student. I just graduated, so in my background here is my school that I went to, Wesselmann. I specialized in learning about coding, so computer science, and mainly web development and web design. And ever since graduating, I was actually offered a job with Wesselmann. So now I'm doing, I'm a part of the process that helps connect CTE to future students of Wesselmann, and hopefully they can see the importance of academics in CTE as well.
Kevin, before I let you go, because I know your path was directly high school employment, is that correct?
Yes, so there was high school employment that was an option, or if I wanted to continue my education in computer science, there are a lot of secondary pathways with Wesselmann that can help go get an associate's or a bachelor's in computer science.
Okay, so what I want to make sure that our audience is recognizing that the CTE program that you went through was so valuable that you were able to you were very employable right out of high school, which is really important. And this is what we want to make sure that our academics are integrated in CTE, because whether it's certification or whether it's the completion of a pathway, it's really important to know that, yes, there are excellent jobs for students right out of high school. So thank you very much for mentioning that, Kevin. Okay, and moving on, Krishana, who is in post-secondary, who probably also could have been employed right out of high school, but chose that post-secondary path. So Krishana, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, hello, my name is Krishana. I graduated in 2020 from Manor High School. And yes, I also graduated with my associates as well due to the program that they had. But when I was there, I was also part of the CTE culinary experience. And after graduating, I'm currently at UTSA doing my undergrad for a bachelor's in business management. I hope to, in the future, own my own business, dealing with something in the food industry. So that's my little info.
Thank you, Krishana. And last but not least is Steve, and Steve's going to tell us a little bit about himself.
Hi, I'm Steve Weselman. I graduated from Catalina Foothills High School in Tucson, Arizona in 2014. I was a part of the technical theater CTE program, and my teacher, Mr. Testa, is actually on the call right now, so hi. So after high school, I graduated. I went to the University of Michigan. I got a degree in theatrical design and production with a concentration in lighting design. And then after that, I got my master's at Boston University in business management. So even though I am not currently working in entertainment, thank you, COVID, I am working in a completely different industry now. I'm in advertising tech, but I'm excited to share how my experience with CTE actually led me to where I am today, and the strangely unique parallels there are between technical theater and the industry I'm actually in now.
Steve, thank you so much. So I'm gonna share my screen again, and we're going to, here we go. We're going to go on to, these are the questions, and the reason I'm flashing these. So for those of you that aren't live on this call, when you watch it, you'll have what we're going to be talking about. You'll have this also up that you can see this because it's being recorded. So we're going to talk about how academics was applied in CTE classes, and how that content connected these students with their teacher, how their teacher connected the academic pieces within the curriculum into the daily lessons, and why it was effective to each of these students as a learner. So we're going to go ahead, and I'm going to open the floor to this great panel that I have. Let me stop sharing. And so again, Steve, I'm going to start with you. Just talking about in a daily lesson for technical theater, how was academics a piece of that? We're talking technical theater, we're talking construction of scenic design and lighting design and sound design and everything. Where were the academics in that?
Exactly. So, I think that a lot of people who aren't familiar with technical theater will go to a show or go to a concert and won't even pay attention to the technical elements like the lighting or the scenic, just because it blends in so well with the part of the show. It's really not a consideration. And so as you are taking classes and really learning about it all, it really all starts to come together, and you start to think about things that the average person doesn't notice. So first of all, just first and foremost, the way that you have to approach pretty much everything in technical theater is from a perspective of, how can I do my job so well that nobody notices that I've done my job? And there's skill that comes into that, whether it is creating a beautiful set, doing lighting like I did, making sure sound mixing works well. All of that has to culminate, but the way to do that well is by knowing the technical ins and outs, which really does come down to academic skills. So for instance, and I apologize, I live in New York City, you're probably going to hear sirens. But for instance, scenic design, as you just mentioned, Dr. Nucci, great point. Like, there is so much measurement, there is so much calculation, there is so much planning with ratios and different types of materials, that math skills are absolutely a part of it and a necessity. Even with like theatrical rigging, you have to be able to calculate the load that you're putting onto a fly line so that you don't overload the system and possibly cause serious injury. So you are using academic skills that truly have to deal with the safety of the participants that you're working with. Or like I just mentioned in lighting, calculating so you don't overload a circuit. Knowing, being able to do these calculations and apply other academic skill sets to it is a huge part of this job of doing your job so well that nobody really notices. And above all else, while it's not necessarily an academic class, let's say like English, math, or science, technical theater was really the first time where you are working cross-functionally across multiple teams to get to one eventual goal. And so even the skills of learning how to work with people, learning how to accept difference of opinion, learning how to participate in group projects, to actually see your work culminate into something real and tangible, that translates back to all of those academic classes that you do take, because all of those skills really do are important and help you become a better student. So it kind of works both ways. It comes from academics into your CTE courses, but then the skills and kind of non-specific academic work that you do transfers back to the academic courses that you are taking simultaneously.
Steve, that's awesome. That sounds like CTE in a bundle. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Krishana, you and I were talking about some communication skills, but I know you've had experience both in culinary, which I mean, to me directly relates to chemistry, it relates to math, it relates to recipe. Can you describe a little bit about some of the conversations we've had regarding what culinary, not only what culinary did for your future plans, but the academic integration, what's integrated currently within your skill set for business?
Yeah. So I was in like the CTE course for the whole 4 years of high school. So progressively, we did beginner learning about management. And then as we went up to our higher classmen, we actually started transitioning to more of the kitchen work. So we did get the hands-on experience of learning how things work and why baking is so important. And you have to measure out things specifically because it reacts a certain way. And if you put a little bit more, then it's going to react differently and you're going to have a different outcome. So I've learned so much of that chemistry-wise, but I also learned a little bit more mathematical. I know like whenever I take my math classes, it's kind of hard for me to translate how I'm going to use this in the real world. But whenever I was taking my culinary classes, whenever we used math, I was like, oh, this makes sense. For example, is when you're looking at a recipe and the recipe you're only making for 4 people, but you have a guest of 20. I now, because of my culinary class, is easy for me, at least, I don't know about others, but it's easy for me to, multiply or put ratios for 20 people so I could make enough for 20 people. So definitely there's different aspects that really helped me. Come my senior year, we started running a cafe for students. So whenever that was taking place, the students ran the cafe and then the teacher was just a guide. So then I've also learned how to write a menu and how to cost price of how much it's going to make, and then also what should I sell it for so I could still get my money back as well as make profit. So that's also like something that I really enjoyed doing, and seeing the results of what I'm making, and then also, making profit out of it. It really encouraged me wanting to go into the business industry just to learn a little bit more in detail of how I could run my own business. So that's just a little bit of how CTE, specifically in culinary, really encouraged my choice in going to the business route, as well as I still want to go down the food section as well. So that's, how they correlate to each other.
Thank you. It sounds like you're going to be between your business and profits and running a business. It sounds like you're going to be a math expert within all of those fields. Kevin, I know your background, computer science, and just the word computer science, we know there's science involved. I'm sure there's STEM. So can you tell us a little bit, though, go into a little bit of detail on the components of what you in your daily classes in coding and computer science learned?
Yes, I may gladly go through a little bit about, the different components and aspects of coding and how it relates, or how academics are integrated into my CTE course. So to kind of start off, my first year teacher for coding was actually a former math teacher. So he had these habits of integrating math, but it made sense because he was able to translate math and make it work with coding and computer science. Most of it was logic. So when we look at formulas for math, like algebra or geometry, when we're solving for different we're solving for X, or we're solving for a missing measurement. A lot of that math is actually able to be transferable to a coding skill, because when we're designing websites and we're creating functions, so different commands for the computer to understand, we have to make sure that the logic is not something that we can understand, but something for the computer to understand. So one example that clearly highlights this is when we created a calculator from scratch. So there was a lot of math, and whenever we had to write the commands, we obviously had to have perfect syntax. So English was a huge aspect that we had to make sure that we got down, because if we have a misspelling on one of the lines of code, it ruins the whole thing, or it just has a bunch of errors. It won't give us the algebra correctly, so our calculator won't work. So that's why it was very important for us to get not only our English side of it, all the syntax correct, but also the math portion of it as well. I believe that it made me kind of appreciate math and its formulas more, because the instructions are there. It's just, how do we get those instructions for a computer to understand? And that led me to be more motivated to understand math and its formulas. Even though some of them are super complicated, it still encouraged me to keep going and try and learn these formulas of math and be able to integrate them into coding.
Great, Kevin, thank you. And you brought up something too, which brings up the point of literacy. And I know Isabel's gonna address a little piece of that for us. So Isabel, can you talk about the literacy component that is regularly integrated into your daily lessons?
Yes, so literacy is a very important skill to have, and it was initially introduced to me and my classmates through our CTE instructor prompting us to read our daily lesson aloud. And no matter what the lesson was, either like map reading or first aid, we had to read the lesson out loud and were encouraged to ask questions on the topic. And this approach developed all of our communication skills and helped me to grow by asking important questions and helping to not be afraid in other classes to ask important questions there too.
I'm glad you asked that. Isabel, I'm going to keep you on for a second. I'm glad you asked that about other classes as well. Can you talk about how you crossed over into how you brought CTE into your academic classes?
Yes, so with literacy and communication, we do a lot of writing in JRTC2 with essays, and that translates to English class as well, with different essays you have to write there, and physics and lab reports with biology and different things like that.
Thank you so much for that. That's going to lead us into our next discussion, and I'll start back with Steve. So Steve, I know you feel the integration of academics was automatically embedded in your lessons. It taught, you learn math skills, literacy skills, and so forth. But can you talk about, and I know, it's been a little time since you've graduated, but even thinking back to college, how did that experience actually help you in your academic courses? Isabel touched on it a little bit, but can you speak to that a little?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned it the other day to you, where I feel like so many students have different learning styles. And of course, the traditional one is you sit in a classroom and you listen to a lecture, and then you take notes, you do homework, and you take tests. I found really through the CTE courses in high school that I'm proud to have always been a good student, but that wasn't my preferred way of learning. I really was more of a hands-on student, where I did best by actually jumping in and trying things and failing and trying again. And so the CTE courses that I took really were kind of catalysts for deciding how I wanted to learn and what I was interested in. I do feel like academics were embedded in the lesson plans, but maybe even not super intentionally. It was the work that was that had to be done to do your role, whether you were in lighting or scenic or whatever, that you were just doing to do what you had to do. And so you were using those skills really even without being direct about it. I think back to my senior year of college. So math actually was not a requirement for my degree. We had science and English and everything else, but not math. But for the grad program that I was looking at going to, they required prerequisite of a math course. And so I took pre-calc, and I hadn't taken pre-calc since high school, since my senior year of high school. And so I was like quite worried. I was like, all right, what have I forgotten in 4 years? But really what I learned is from being a lighting design student in theatrical production in college, I was using those skills and doing math just in my daily work in my designs that I was doing. When I got to the class, I realized that there was a lot more that I knew than I realized and that I thought I would. And it really was because these were the skills that I had been using, just not even consciously in the work that I was doing, but applied to the kind of formal in classroom setting. That's what I discovered through it. So yeah, I think that academics are super important, and they do play a role in the CTE courses that we do. But the best way for students to learn them is almost to have them not know that they're learning them, to be utilizing the skills and knowing what they need to do, but thinking about it and approaching it in such a different way.
Thank you for mentioning that. And that's actually why we're having this webinar, because I think after speaking individually to each of you, you've had time to think about how have I utilized those academics and what prompted me to do so. So now, Krishana, it's going to be your turn, and I'm going to ask you the same thing. How are you approaching some of the courses you're taking now? And how did, just like Steve had talked about, how did those hidden embedded academics help you be successful or more successful than you already are? And I wanted to re-mention what you were mentioning before, that you had an associate degree, community college associate degree by the time you graduated high school, because you attended an early college high school, which was wonderful. But you also were able to complete a 4-year culinary pathway, which I think is tremendous, because I know the load of early college, high school. But going back to, can you also address how it helped you in your other courses?
Yeah. So I think for me, culinary is something, basically in my culinary classes, my junior and senior year, we did highly intense, like job ready type action. So we did a lot of catering gigs. Again, we ran our own cafe. And so that really helps me with my classes now, because I am a business student, and I didn't really, because I graduated with my associates, I went straight into those business classes. So I was taking marketing, management, accounting, all of that my first year of like official college. So it was kind of intimidating for me at first. But like Steve was saying, I am a person that I learned I'm a more hands-on person. Unfortunately, I went to college during that 2020 experience, so everything was online, which honestly, really, I really struggled with. But because of culinary and how the system, or how like it ran in the classroom, my teacher really loved communication, and going to talk to her like to the side and being able to communicate what's happening and what's going on. I felt like I was easily able to do that with all my professors, no matter what the subject is. I just sent them an email, and then they were able to understand. A lot of students, their first year of college, I've learned, as well as just talking with my peers, they're kind of intimidated. They're like, oh, I don't know what to do with this situation. And they just tell their friends. And I always tell them to communicate with their professors. And so that has been helpful tremendously, just navigating through the culinary world, or not culinary world, sorry, navigating through the college world. But as far as like how like the education, or the subtle education, like Steve was talking about, in the classes from my culinary classes, have been whenever I'm taking my classes now at UTSA, I see like, oh, this is kind of what I did whenever I ran a cafe without really knowing. So I was already budgeting, I was already marketing, promoting things, promos, things of that nature. So it was easily translated, and I was like, oh, this is like part 2 of what I did in high school. And, I just really elevated what I already known, and now putting it on a more professional level than being an amateur at first.
So good to hear. Kevin, you're next.
So you wanted me to talk about that subtle education or?
Both. I really want to. I want you to talk about how you really translated what you were doing in coding. And I know you mentioned the math piece and everything, but I know there's so much more. And you had started out with the literacy piece. So how did that then affect your academic courses? How did you then relate that back? Because Steve started out with a hands-on learner. We know many CTE students prefer that style of learning. So you're actually doing, but can you communicate how that actually affected how you did in your academic subjects?
I'd like to say that to kind of reiterate what Steve and Krishana, if I'm saying that correctly, I'd like to reiterate what they were talking about, how even though we may not see it, we're still working on with the concepts that we get from academics with our CTE learning. So with CTE, we're embedding everything that we've learned with our formulas and our math, and then it just works together. They go hand in hand. So with what I was using with my regular math and English courses in CTE, I was able to use note taking. So when I went to CTE, when I went to Wesselmann, I learned a new form of note taking, and I learned different ways of we call it troubleshooting when it comes to computer science and programs and websites, but I used similar concepts and instructions to handle my other academic work. So when I would go through my math class or my English class and I wasn't really understanding the situation, I would first take notes of the situation, describing, okay, so I'm having issue with this math problem. I need to be able to break it down, and where am I failing? And that way of kind of troubleshooting comes from my coding troubleshooting. I would look and see through my lines of code and see, okay, where am I having the trouble? Where's it coming from? And then I would apply that with my math, mainly math, because I'm not the brightest in math. So being able to have this like hands-on trial and error style of learning with coding helped me a lot with my math, bringing it to life and just making it a lot more comprehensible. And it actually gave purpose to my education. I'd say that CTE actually gave purpose for my education in academics. So being able to just piece those together, seeing how they work hand in hand was really helpful. And I think was a huge part of my success in education.
Great, thank you so much, Kevin. Isabel, you mentioned, and I know we didn't go into length about this, but you mentioned you go actually to other schools and you speak to other students about JROTC. Can you talk a little bit about the communication skills that you've had to develop and how that might have been crosswalk to some of your literacy courses? And just exactly what you do, because I know we haven't discussed that, but I think that's really interesting.
There's a section we learn about, and it's called the winning colors, and it prompts you to learn about yourself and how you would work with other people in a group. So the winning colors are separated into 4 different groups, each with different characteristics. And by identifying yourself as a leader, relator, planner, or adventurer, you can identify others and who you would work best with. And this helps with your communication skills. And this lesson helped me in my other core classes like physics and biology when we have to work in groups for labs. And I can identify who I work best with and most efficiently.
And can you tell everyone, because we're going to move into our last question, which is how your CTE experience have influenced what your career goals are. And I know you're the only one who's still in high school. So can you talk to us a little bit about what your plans are for after you graduate, and maybe 10 years from now, where do you want to be?
My experiences in my CTE course have encouraged me to pursue my dream career as a Marine Corps pilot, and integrating academics into CTE curriculums helps students uncover skills they need for the real world, such as writing essays to apply for colleges and scholarships, and it sets them up for success in the future.
Thank you so much. Steve, you're already in your career, or at least a career that you've moved around. I don't know if you're going to move around further, but what actually in your CTE experiences, like you said, you're not in quote technical theater or entertainment at the moment. Is that something that you know you can always fall back on, or have you moved to a completely different sector? And because the sector that you're currently in, there's probably a CTE cluster that matches that. So maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I would never say that theater is a fallback, because it definitely was a very important part of who I am and what I learned to do and what interests I had. And just taking the classes in high school was really the first introduction to kind of, it sounds cheesy, but like discovering myself, because taking this path of theater has led me to so many different opportunities that have allowed me to see what I like and what I don't like. Like, I have had the amazing opportunities to work on like national award shows like the Tonys and the Grammys, and also do smaller things and assist on Broadway shows. And I've done so much, and all of that comes together to really help me decide what path I want to take.
Okay, wait. You just mentioned the Tonys, the Grammys, and Broadway shows. You didn't mention any of that. Just briefly tell us what you did at those events.
Yeah. So I was a lighting design intern on the Tony Awards for 2 years after my freshman and sophomore years of college. I was a lighting design intern on the Grammy Awards my junior year. I was actually studying abroad in Spain. I had to fly back to LA for a week and then fly back, but I actually got the University of Michigan to pay for it. It was part of like an entrepreneurial grant, so that was super cool. I've worked on the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade for 7 years. I assisted on a Broadway show at the Roundabout Theater Company called Holiday Inn. I was a talent escort for 2 years for the MTV VMA Awards. So just connections that lead to connections that lead to so many different opportunities and experiences. And it all started from finding my love of production in high school theater, really.
Excellent. I was unaware of that. I knew your freshman year, I wrote something for you for the Tonys, but after that, I didn't know any of the other pieces. So that's fantastic. What great experiences that stemmed from your high school CTE. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but when you said that, I was like, wow.
No, you're totally fine. So basically, when it comes to like academics, that helps just from high school and beyond. Even when it comes to scripts, music, television, everything is written. And so being able to understand that, you were mentioning literacy earlier, being able to interpret it, look for those hidden meanings and how you can really kind of incorporate those things into a show. It's the same way with your own life, especially in a world right now where, I've been working from home for the last 2 years. Everything is written. We do have our video meetings, but the majority of our communications are like over Slack, or we're writing up project plans, or we're doing all of that. And so being able to have all of the academic literacy skills and interpretation skills, and being able to be proactive in your thoughts and your actions in knowing the status of something and what has to happen to push it through. All of those come together into the real world 100%. And so big time, I would say that, it's kind of a domino effect. One thing leads to another, but really the experiences, and again, I'll bring it back to kind of that cross-functional collaboration. I'm a project manager now. So I am working with teams across so many different people in so many different teams, from computer science and programming on our development teams to our product marketing teams. And so being able to speak everyone's language to eventually reach one goal, that was kind of the parallel that I was mentioning with theater, is you're working across all these departments to reach that one goal. So like big time, the experiences and the learnings that I had, even inadvertently from my CTE experiences, have definitely helped me kind of find the path that I've taken, and have greatly influenced what I have been able to do now in my professional life.
Thank you so much for that. Krishana, I know you've mentioned that you eventually hope to go into your own business. You want to culminate just your final thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I've always known I wanted to go into like the food industry since like a very young age because of like the Food Network show. But being in high school throughout the 4 years, still doing culinary, honestly, like you mentioned earlier, usually when you do early college programs, you don't complete the 4 years of the CTE program just because of the workload. But I made sure to I really wanted to finish it because I really do like culinary, and I like business, and then I like food as well. So that really is why I wanted to finish, and I'm still going strong, and I really do hope to own my own business in the food industry as time progressed. And that's kind of the reason why that's the reason why I chose business, so I could, elevate. And culinary just showed those little things of how I should do it, what I should need to know. Honestly, picking my classes for the university now, I'm like, oh, that would be interesting. And that's because I got introduced to it in high school. So I'm learning a little bit more about working with the team, like directing others, employment. Even though I didn't get paid being in high school, I still technically got paid in grades and things of that nature. So I'm learning a little bit more, but with money now. So that's how culinary has translated me to want to become a businesswoman in the future.
Great, thank you. And I know you'll be fantastic at it. Kevin, can you tell us maybe where you hope to be in 10 years?
Hello, sorry, my computer just randomly turned off. Sorry, was it my turn or?
Yes, it was your turn. I was just asking, can you tell us, I know because you just graduated last year, can you look like I had Isabel, can you tell us maybe 10 years from now where you're looking to be?
All right, so just 1 year out of high school, a lot has happened. I've gotten a job with, I think, one of the most amazing schools I've ever been to. And, nothing, it is kind of personal. I've been there. But right now I'm working in recruitment, going out to schools, talking about the importance of CTE and WestMech and why students should take advantage of this opportunity. Where I am at the moment, I think I've opened multiple doors for a career. And just to kind of reiterate, Steve, I think my experience in CTE isn't something to fall back on, but something to use as a stepping stone. So I'd like to use my experience in CTE as a stepping stone towards things that I really like. So I've increased my knowledge and my love for my hobby in auto tech. So working on cars and different things like that. So do I take a step from coding to auto, or digital media has been another kind of career pathway that I've been considering looking forward to. So do I take a stepping stone from coding to digital media? There's just multiple possibilities, and those are just two examples of it, but there's multiple pathways, and I'm just forever grateful for the opportunity to participate in CTE and for CTE to impact my life in such a very positive way. And 10 years from now, I just see myself still involved with CTE one way or another, either, talking about it, participating in it, or even just being a product of CTE is really the best thing that could happen in these 10 years.
Thank you so much for that. And I think we're coming close to our end time. I'm going to share the PowerPoint one more time, just so that everybody has an opportunity to have information and have my information if they need to contact me, or if they want to get more involved with the committee that we already have ongoing. Students, if any of you would like to be on the committee, you already have my email. You know, you're more than welcome to join our committee. We meet probably about once a month, and we are doing ongoing work. I'm going to stop sharing now because I know this will be recorded. Is there any other final comments from our students or any questions from our audience? Megan, I don't know if you've been keeping track of chat or Q&A.
I have. I think that we have done a great job of covering all these. I think there's a lot of gratitude for the subject matter today and for our panelists today, as ACT would also like to chime in. I know Steve, our Deputy Executive Director, is on here, and he was chiming in his gratitude, and I'll piggyback that. We are so grateful for your time and expertise and experiences. ACT loves hearing from the student-led perspective. As Jill referenced, this will be posted to our website as a recording. And we really appreciate all your hard work on these webinars, Jill. They've been so helpful to our members.
Well, I appreciate these students, and I know all of you are very busy, and I can't tell you how valuable this has been to the participants and the whole CTE world across the country. And I know everybody's in a different place in the country. We've got Alabama, we've got New York, we've got Texas, we've got Arizona. We're just all over the place. So this is just, it's wonderful to know that CTE is well and alive, and we will keep pushing for academic integration within CTE. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Megan.
Nope, that's all I had. And just a reminder, these will be posted to our website, and to check back on our webinars page for new and upcoming webinars. I know Jill was working on some new ones in the pipeline, so this won't be the end of your webinar experiences, Jill. So thank you for everything.
You're very, very welcome. And thank you again to those of you that attended. And we just hope you pass on the webinar, and anybody can watch it. It will be posted on the ACTE website. Thank you.
Bye-bye.